Hello, welcome to today's video. My name is Otter. If you have been to my channel before, hello, hi, welcome. It is really lovely to see you again. And if you haven't been to my channel before, hello, hi, welcome. It is really lovely to meet you. Apologies for the lack of uploads at the beginning of this year. You may or may not know that I had a slight technical issue where a hard drive that I had in my PC corrupted itself. And everything YouTube related and content created for me was destroyed. And basically my only choice was to pay a whole load of money to get someone professional and very, very clever to get all that information back. And I don't have that kind of money lying around, so I had to start from scratch. But this video is going to be all about Line Play, the mobile gaming MMO that stylistically is unlike any I've looked at on this channel before and is potentially one of the most consumerism focused yet. It was a popular avatar focused virtual world that ran from November 2012 until April of 2024 when the game closed down. Now personally, I'm always impressed by a virtual world like this that manages to last a decade or longer. A lot of MMOs seem to have had a natural lifespan or expiry date due to technology pushing on, the gaming industry changing, people growing out of their old favorite games and moving on, but this one managed to last from 2012 until 2024, which is really, really recent. And obviously we know that not all MMOs were destined to fail. For example, Movie Star Planet has a second version and is now an app-based game rather than a browser-based game, and Star Stable Online is probably one of the most successful and popular girly MMOs that is still running up until this date. Both of these are at least a decade old and are still popular to varying degrees. There's many factors that go into an MMO being able to run for a long period of time. So what made Line Play different? Why did an MMO that is ran by one of the biggest tech firms in Japan, lasted over a decade and had millions and millions of players suddenly closed down in 2024? I always ask at the beginning of my videos that if you do find yourself enjoying today's video at any point, that you consider dropping this video a like and subscribing to see many more videos just like this one. So without further ado, let's take a look at the full story of Line Play. Line Play. Line Play was developed by Line Corporation, which was originally known as Han Game Japan or NHN Japan. It has always had its roots in the gaming industry as it was formed as a subsidiary of a Korean community gaming site named Han Game. Line Corporation actually has quite a unique and unusual development story, having been established in response to a 2011 earthquake. Not only was this measured as a magnitude of 8.9, but it also caused a 30-foot high tsunami and triggered a nuclear meltdown at a power plant. As you would expect, the country, Japan, was pretty much devastated and communication was impossible. As Business Insider reports, stranded citizens had no way of calling their loved ones to see if they were all right, so they had to find some form of internet access to reach out to their families. 3 months later, Line Messenger was born. After its initial launch, Line gained 50 million users in under a year. The Messenger app is by far one of their most popular and biggest entities to date, but off the back of this success, the company then developed a number of other technological products and apps that reflected internet culture at the time. For example, their successful Line Music app, their manga site which Webtoons now runs, and of course the MMO Line Play, which ran as beta in November of 2012 and then fully released for Japanese gamers in December of that same year. It wouldn't be released to the rest of the world until February of 2013, and with this worldwide release, the game exploded. It was already popular and being received well in Japan and Korea, but with the worldwide release, the game became huge. Line Play has been described somewhere, I can't remember exactly where, but it was described as a dollhouse style MMO, which I feel like kind of makes sense because it's not quite life sim. You do complete some activities that reflect things that you do in real life, but the main emphasis of gameplay in the game is not simulating a life as your avatar, but rather just being your avatar as a whole and the way that you present yourself through your avatar. Avatars were made at the creation of the player's account, where you could choose to present as a boy, girl, or an animal which had a chibi design. The environments and visual design were a pretty simple cartoon style with in-game items referencing current trends, kawaii lolita, and fantasy aesthetics. Players had access to a few locations in the game, including their own homes which they could decorate themselves. They could also visit other players' homes to get inspiration and also do tasks for monetary rewards. They could also join chat rooms called lounges, squares or the square, which was kind of like set up as a cafe or a restaurant or like an outside space where players could meet and chat. I imagine probably using Line Messenger as the sort of like back-end development for that, which would also encourage people playing Line Play to use Line Messenger. There's a lot of connectivity between Line Corporation's apps, which is to be expected, like fair enough, they do cross over and it makes sense. Compared to other games that we've looked at on this channel before, I do feel like the actual virtual space that you can explore feels fairly limited. I don't know if it's just because it's on a mobile device rather than a PC, as this is the first one that we're looking at that is exclusively for mobile, which I think makes the game feel smaller and a lot more intimate, which isn't a bad thing necessarily, but just something that I wanted to note. Although I do think that the potential space that environments and virtual space would have taken up was definitely taken up by something else. So Line Play basically ran free to play for all of its life, with gems the standard currency being widely available to all players in the beginning. These could be earned through a variety of different activities. For example, you could complete quests, and playing games was another big way that people earned and farmed a lot of gems. There was also cash, the premium currency, which was introduced in 2014 and could be bought with real-world money. With this currency, players could shop for items and fashion pieces, of course, but the way to get more specific, exciting, or rare items was through gacha. I'm sure you already know, but if you don't, gacha is basically a form of gentle gambling that began as a real-life concept that had small toys in machines that you would pop a coin into, turn the handle, and the little capsule would pop out with a random toy in it. They were actually started in Japan in the 1960s, and later became a staple within Japanese mobile gaming in the 2010s. And now I think for gamers, especially gamers that play MMOs, co-op virtual world-based games, gacha is like a standard part of these games now. And if done right, it can be incredibly lucrative, with it being insanely addictive. Some theorizes that it actually draws upon hunter-gatherer instincts or like the fear of missing out. If you're not playing the gacha, you're not going to get these cute items for your characters, that sort of thing. And as well, there is that obvious dopamine hit that you get when you do draw that gun skin or the dress or the item that you've been really craving, or that one really rare, hard to get piece that has like a 0.001% chance of being rolled. Due to a mixture of this addictive nature that gacha had, the design of the prizes, and also an emphasis on gacha by the developers of Line Play, gacha seem to be one of the biggest draws and most attractive parts of the game. Gacha balls in Line Play could contain anything from furnishings, pets, clothes, hair, accessories, you name it, from a specific collection or theme. They could be purchased with all forms of currency, which would then earn you turns. The content of these changed following seasonal changes, events, or brand collaborations, of which Line Play had some pretty big ones. Within its first year, they'd already collaborated with some big celebrities and huge brands like Sanrio and even Panasonic. These collaborations enabled Line Play to already begin expanding the game within a year of its release, introducing the lounges, minigames, and the diary mechanic. They also diversified their campaigns, working with upcoming influencers and content creators. YouTube and the influencer were only just finding their place during Line Play's development, I feel like, as an actual career and form of earning money. A lot of the time, there was a link dropped in the bio of the video or the post explaining that they should play Line Play or check out their room. Or on the other end of the scale, Line Play was directly in the video as an advert or was the whole context of the video. An example of the whole context of the video case is that they actually worked with Trisha Paytas in 2016, I think, and she released and produced a whole music video subtly called Line Play. The video is basically her expressing her love for the game and encouraging people to come and play it. It's very broad and not very specific in the stuff that she's mentioning and bringing up in terms of what you actually do in the game. There is 2 specific moments where she specifically mentions how easy it is to gain gems, which is hilarious for me because by the point that this music video was produced, people were already publicly complaining that gems have become really difficult to earn and the monetization on Line Play was getting severe. And at this point as well, I've just realized I haven't mentioned, but the line play target audience is a little bit murky. I'm not exactly sure who they were targeting with this game. Given the visual elements of the game and the way that it looks, I'm inclined to say that it's like elder children / tweens and teens. But then also given the nature of the game and the actual gameplay stuff that you do, it feels more like teens and young adults. So I feel like line play was kind of just for anyone who felt like playing it and they wanted to hit as broad a audience as possible, which of course comes with its own unique set of problems and issues that could arise. But funnily enough, I couldn't actually see any big instances or problems or experiences that people had with negative, predatorish experiences on this site. That's not to say it didn't happen, and it most likely probably did. Anyway, these brand deals were obviously a priority for Line Corporation as they round off in a 2013 article written by Line Corp. LinePlay is continuously working to provide new and improved features and new ways for celebrities and companies to connect to users, and growing its user base by offering unique and innovative communication avenues. I can imagine that the team behind LinePlay had probably seen in the past how beneficial collaborative promotional efforts could be for a virtual world. And it seems online that spending money at this point in LinePlay's lifetime, there wasn't much of an incentive to actually spend a lot of money on the site because so many people were able to access and find systems of earning a lot of gems for free. So even though LinePlay was insanely popular, people were buying currency, but not at a huge rate, and they did have some pretty good collaborations with both brands and celebrities. This wasn't quite enough for LinePlay, and in 2016 there would be an update that would change the game forever. 2016, there was a huge update which added a massive element to the game. On their Facebook page, they kind of list off the things that are going to be introduced. There was a change of some displays and the way that avatars looked across the game. Ultra rare items were introduced, pets, and most importantly, VIPs and ranking. Now, I think this ranking system was fairly chill when it first started and they initially brought it in, but it definitely grew into something pretty intense. This game literally becomes obsessed with ranking everything. Initially, there was only 3 main ranks: gold, diamond, and platinum. There was also white rank, bronze, and silver. They would introduce a further rank a little bit later on, but we'll talk about that later on in the video. Now, the introduction of VIPs and ranking kind of makes the game feel like a capitalism class simulation role player game. Obviously, a lot of MMOs that we've looked at, if not all of them, have had some form of paid membership or system in which people pay to benefit from further perks. But unlike others, LinePlay had a system that increased players' in-game status by the amount of real money they invested into the game, under the guise of collecting a specific number of stars for each rank, with each having their own benefits. But to be fair to Line Corp, even though they had introduced this system where you spend money to level up, the game hadn't become pay to play yet. There was still a lot of ways to access free currency in the game, which kept a lot of players enjoying and using the site. You could actually level up to gold for free by collecting stars as a daily gift option, but any higher rank than that requires you to buy currency from the shop, in which you would buy packs or deals on gems or cash, which then gave you a specific number of stars. Now, I'd say this is pretty standard for an MMO. A lot of other virtual worlds and sites have this membership option that gives benefits and quality of life elements that make it better or more attractive to pay to play the game. Also, MMOs and virtual worlds, no matter how big a company is behind them, they need to have evidence of being financially productive and beneficial in order to keep them alive. But with LinePlay, I do feel that with the tiered ranking system that is kind of competitive to get through, it's kind of like who can spend the most amount of money to get the highest, it does exacerbate the elitism that already comes with MMOs and membership. A lot of MMOs have issues with bullying and exclusion because of these memberships and VIP systems that are set up. So you can only imagine when this is kind of like turned up to 100 on the dial, how this may have affected bullying and negative interactions on the site. But with the VIP ranking system for line play, there was a huge catch. Basically, the rank reset at the end of every month. As I mentioned earlier, a further rank was introduced, which was called Royal. Now, if you managed to hit Royal rank, you would be fine, your rank would go nowhere, you would stay Royal forever, pretty much. Anything below that, all of them, Plat, Diamond, Gold, Silver, Bronze, whatever you are, you get sent straight back down to White, to the bottom, with everyone else. And of course, I hear you. Club Penguin, Moshi Monsters had a set flat rate of £30 for a year's worth of membership. Star Stable Online has a pay once, be a VIP forever. I think it's like £60. But the difference with line play is not only the fact is that there's this competitiveness and elitism that comes with rising through the ranks, but also the price that players would pay to get to these ranks. If any of these numbers are wrong or you remember it slightly differently, please let me know and we can talk about it in the comments. But I have managed to find, or at least try to find, visual photo screenshot evidence or other players' experience and words to sort of figure out what it was like to pay to be these ranks in line play. So obviously we mentioned a bit ago that in order to rise above any rank above Gold, you would have to pay real world money, which would then earn you stars. From finding photo and player experience evidence online, it generally seems to be that 1 star equals $1. So for example, if you bought the $1.99 cash pack, you'd receive 2 stars because you basically spent $2. For some reason though, there was some examples where 1 star didn't exactly equal $1. In this case, I could see that it was a little bit more than $1. For example, this pack cost $99.99, but you'd only receive 95 stars instead of 100 stars. I'm going to assume that it was that kind of sneaky tactic that MMOs would do, where they would do a really random or like oddly specific number of XP or stars in a pack to then encourage you to spend more. So if you wanted 100 stars to round yourself up to the next level or whatever, instead of spending $100, in order to hit 100, you would need to spend $100 to get your 95 star, and then an additional $5 on top of that in order to hit 100. Instead of just paying $100, getting 100 stars, you would then have to pay $105 to get 100 stars. And this is a really common tactic that a lot of MMOs do. But in terms of prices for the different ranks, there's still a little bit of roleplay and pretend that we're a player in line play who wants to hit plat by the end of the month. Theoretically, this should cost us $65 if we're at gold. We have to work our way through the other ranks first, which requires 55 stars, but this is free as we know that you could hit rank gold by collecting daily rewards. The problem with this though is that by the time you hit gold for free, you have such a small amount of time to actually play and pull gachas at plat rank before the rank system is reset at the end of the month. So if you actually want to have a substantial amount of time in any rank above gold, you're going to have to pay your way to the tune of $130 a month at least. And obviously with this price, you are getting a load of cash and gems along with your rank. But these are going to run out eventually, and if you're playing the game enough to a point where you're going to want to be a specific rank, you're probably going to end up running out and wanting to spend more money. As well, there was probably some deals or events that made the price a little bit less. So in this video here, the player earns 130 stars for completing quests, I think for free, which sends them straight to plat. I think this was part of some promotional event where you could experience being plat for free if you did this quest. There were also flash sale packs that gave you some cash and gems in addition to a number of stars for a slightly reduced rate. But objectively, if you didn't buy a sale pack or get to gold rank using the freeway, to be a platinum rank VIP for a full calendar year, you're going to have to pay around about $1,560. Although there is a save point, which we mentioned earlier, where if you hit Royal, you are permanently Royal for however long your account lasts, basically. And the Line Play wiki states that in order to become a permanent VIP Royal member, you must collect 5,000 or more stars in total. Now I can imagine you've already put 2 and 2 together and can see where I'm going here, but if we do the maths and our original rule of $1 equals 1 star still applies, that means to be a permanent royal VIP, you must spend $5,000. And I quite frankly could not believe this at first. I genuinely did not believe this. I sat here and was like, no, I am wrong. That like, I've read that wrong. I've interpreted this wrong. There is no way they are expecting people to pay and spend $5,000 on a MMO mobile game to be a permanent royal rank. I kind of like wanted to check because this felt like a pretty big error to make, and I scoured the internet for any form of evidence that I could find that this was correct. I came to find out that this is objectively correct. Perhaps not $5,000 specifically, but definitely somewhere around that region. Definitely in the multiple of thousands. As mentioned before, this is obviously objective. The overall price you might end up paying in order to hit that point could be a little bit less or a little bit more, depending on how you obtained the stars and the price you paid for the individual packs in order to get there. I guess it also makes it a little bit more digestible when you think about potentially paying anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000 to hit a rank in a game. That it's actually the amount of stars over the entire lifetime of your account, not just in 1 month. So they're not expecting you to pay $5,000 in a month. It's more $5,000 or however amount you spend to get there over an entire lifetime. So if you're paying to hit smaller ranks, you could be spending like $1,000 at least yearly to hit plat. And then also think about the amount of money that people might have been putting into additional gems, coins, whatever. There is evidence that enough people hit this rank and were kind of surviving off of the amount that they'd spent and not spending any more. They added more ranks for Royal. They added a further ranking system for Royal rank specifically to encourage Royal members to spend more money. I just, like, there has to be a line. There has to be a line where you stop ranking, where you stop VIPing, where you stop making people pay to be more than the next person. I feel like it's enough. They also changed the stars currency. So when you had the stars currency, you could specifically see the number of stars that you needed to get up to the next rank. In 2019, they actually changed it to XP instead of stars and removed the specific number of stars or XP that you would need to buy in order to move up to the next rank. So yeah, that's kind of like the ranking system and line play explained in a very chaotic manner. And I get that companies need to make an income. I've already mentioned this. I get that companies have to make an income. MMOs have to be financially green and doing well in order for companies to have value in them and to keep them open. But this is just extortionate. Like, if you don't think this is a little bit silly, I think you need to have a chat with yourself. I just want to disclaim as well, I'm not shaming anyone for spending that amount of money or wanting to spend that amount of money. If you truly got joy from this game and investing money into this game was where you found your happiness, then crack on. I think the context of where this game has come from as well, it feels incredibly icky and greedy for one of the biggest tech companies in Japan to be charging these prices. Also, in the context of the game and what it demands to run, obviously there was a lot of servers, and I can imagine there was mods and obviously a whole development team behind the game that needs paying, but the game itself was pretty low demand. I mean, look at the graphical design and the actual game itself. It doesn't scream, I charge a lot to run consistently. And like I said, if Line Corporation wasn't one of the biggest tech companies in Japan, I would have less of an issue with them charging this amount. But considering that in 2016, the same year that they introduced VIPs, Line Corporation was listed on the Tokyo Stock Exchange as raising approximately $1.1 billion in July of 2016, being one of the largest tech IPOs that year. So it just comes across as greed, honestly. It just feels incredibly icky. In my opinion, the end of line play begins way before its eventual death in 2024. Players were already criticizing the site with the changes that were made in 2016 and even a little bit before that, and the introduction of VIP ranks. According to multiple sources, by 2021, the game was pretty much completely paid to play and had suffered a huge lack of players. It's fairly easy to see and sort of speculate as to why the game dropped in players so much. So the first of which is overwhelming increase in pay to play, which obviously, given that we've literally just talked about it, it makes sense to talk about it first and feels like one of the main reasons as to why so many players did drop off of playing the game. The Line Play Facebook page gives a real good insight into an understandable dislike for increased incentives and push for players to spend money on the game. It's the main comments across most of their social media posts on this site, and you can just tell that players had had enough of Line Corp by this point. According to Peachy, a Line Play content creator, the site had completely died out by 2021, citing the removal of free ways to earn currency as one of the main reasons that the site dropped in players, along with chat rooms being removed and replaced by the Square, and a reduction in event quality as reasons why. With the increase in pay to play, we see that the player base kind of refines itself to only people that can afford to get joy from the game, especially as the FOMO increases, and when you physically cannot spend money to enjoy the game and feel like you're included, it just pushes you away from the game completely. Along with this, the fact that a lot of players were probably started the game when they were fairly young and then are now growing up into teenagers and young adults. Potentially your financial backing still isn't going to be able to support the way that the game is developing and the way that it wants you to spend money, so you're going to be pushed away even further, leading to a drop in players. Another reason why I think the game eventually died out is lack of compassionate, communicative, or humanized management. Something which I've often struggled to put into words when talking about MMOs, especially the closure of them, is how much damage a uncommunicative or cold management or dev team can do to a site. Something which I've commonly seen across MMOs is that teams that tend not to communicate and be human with their players tend to suffer more when the site goes downhill, because players just can't empathize with the team behind them because they don't know them. And obviously there has to be a boundary. We've seen with Chit Chat City how when you don't have a professional team working behind a site, it can spiral into chaos and a lot of negative interactions can happen and things can slip under the radar. People can get away with doing really nasty things, and you kind of have too much of a connection where players feel like they know you too much and you owe them too much, which can be just as damaging or even more damaging as being too cold. And I feel like it's only recently in marketing that this humanized form of interacting with customers or players in games has sort of come to be the norm, especially with the rise of social media where people are able to be closer to companies than ever before, like metaphysically, virtually, given the nature of MMOs and how players would interact with those. Obviously it's different to a brand, but the same kind of influence and conclusion applies. But in the context of MMOs, when you do see the more warm, openly communicative development team behind the game, openly talking with players and making sure that they are communicating with them, especially when there's problems with the game, it does help build up a more loyal player base with a longer emotional fuse. But it seems with Line Play, there was a lot of issues happening, and the team behind Line Play who were in charge of communicating with players about problems like this didn't seem very empathetic to the problems that players were facing. Across different parts of the internet, a lot of ex-Line Play players have discussed how their accounts have been banned after they had spent a lot of money, which doesn't make sense when you initially think about it, but then again it kind of does. Obviously, they expected the team and the creators of their game that they love so much to respond and help them, but a lot of the time there doesn't seem to be much communication at all, or the player was kind of just shrugged off as, sorry, there's really nothing we can do for you. Now, the games that we've spoken about in the past that players could play to earn gems were actually removed between 2016, I think, and like 2021. And it's hilarious to me because this is the only actual gameplay element of the game when you think about like gaming objectively. And although Line Play only had 5 actual mini-games that were individually accessible to specific countries, these provided some actual gameplay and were also a way for players to earn a substantial amount of free gems to be able to partake in gacha rolls if they couldn't afford to invest real money. So when these were removed from the game, obviously people were very, very upset as it excluded a lot of people from being able to partake in gacha as much as they would like, and also just removed a part of the game that people enjoyed. The fourth reason I have is poor server management and bugs. I don't actually have a lot of evidence for this, but I did find another niche, kind of looks like a wiki page. I think it's translated from Korean, so the wording is a little bit odd in some places, but stick with me. The article or wiki page really describes well the life and history of Line Play. I found this quite late into my script writing, so I'm gutted that I didn't find it sooner, as it would have been really, really handy to verify things that I was finding out. For the decline of Line Play, it was still helpful as they kind of go into the description and explanation of the management and bugginess of the game. Server management is quite lax. Even if there are not many users connected, it is common for the game to stop or crash due to an error. In a square crowded with users wearing action items, you can really experience hell. Also, there are many cases where even if you high-five or press the action star to complete a quest, the quest does not break and remains the same. Additionally, with the recent Garden update, the originally severe lag has become worse, which kind of makes you question again why they were charging people as much as they were if the game was running this badly. Accounts themselves had become unstable, with the team deleting accounts incorrectly, and when players asked why their account was gone, the management would respond saying that the account was deleted by directly entering the deletion code, essentially blaming the user. Now, I'm not sure whether they had like a dev way of entering a code that deleted the account, or whether it was a player choice to activate the deletion of an account and then they would be sent a code to put in to sort of verify that that was actually what they wanted to do, and they were telling players that that was what they must have done because there's no way that the account could have been deleted by accident. But people were seeing an increase in this, especially with accounts that had spent a lot of money recently or like overall over the whole game. And the last overall reason, which I feel like contributed to the drop of players and the eventual closing of Line Play, is the rehashing and reusing of previous content as paid items or gacha. According to the same document, the wiki article page that I found, a pretty shady thing happened and was starting to happen as early as 2017 in Line Play. Now, the dev team was apparently reusing events themselves as a whole, or specific items that had already been sold and paid for by users in the past. Now, I think the author of the wiki page speculates that this could be due to a drop of team members, specifically in the item designing department, and I can imagine that's probably true. And obviously with gacha there is a risk that you're going to get duplicate items, or you're not going to get the item that you specifically want. But I feel like with something like this, when you're paying prices as much as you are for Line Play, you're going to be expecting new items every time, or to be explicitly told that this is a old event gacha, or there are previously sold items in this pack that you might want. Whether they're valuable or not and players might actually want them, it should be very explicitly stated that these items have already been sold before. Like, morally, I feel like that is what you should do. There were some examples where they just took old items and put them in mystery boxes or gacha pools, and in some cases they actually tried to recolor the items, but people were managing to recognize them and called out Line Play on this. And for me, there is a hilarious irony in this, in that it's not okay for players to have value in old items and be able to trade them to other players for currency or other items of a similar value. But it is okay for the dev team to reuse these items without telling players that they're old items and that they may have been sold to them before, and put them in mystery boxes for a price. that is probably higher than the value of the item because it is old. Now, all of the reasons we have just discussed, we can speculate led to an unsustainable player base for line play. When you combine this with the common trend that we see across MMOs and virtual worlds is that as they age, a maturing player base that no longer has the interest or time slowly becomes inactive, leading to an inevitable drop-off in players. For line play, I feel like this was definitely a main factor as to why the site eventually closed, but there was also something bigger happening behind the scenes. Line Corporation itself as a company has gone through a lot of administrative and business related changes throughout the years. It also made a pretty significant merger in 2021 when it joined forces with Yahoo Japan. This was a part of a 50-50 partnership into a new company between SoftBank and Line Corporation, now known as A Holdings Corp and owned by Z Holdings. And I feel like this was definitely a signifier that the game was potentially going to end soon, given how the company priority changed within the merger. 2 years on, they would lean even further into this when Yahoo, Z Entertainment, and Z Data merged into Z Holdings and changed their name to Line Yahoo Corporation on the 1st of October 2023. Now, if you're paying attention, you'll recognize that this was just 9 days before the announcement of closure. Line Play closed down in the spring of last year, 2024. They did give what was left of the player base a couple of months' notice, which is more than a lot of other MMOs did. On the 10th of October 2023, Line Corporation released a statement notifying players of the game's upcoming removal from app stores on the 18th of April 2024 and its official closure later in May. We regret to announce that service for Line Play will be closing soon. We would like to extend our sincerest apologies for the closure and gratitude to all players who have supported the service up until now. Additionally, they dropped a schedule which also reveals that they were planning to give out refunds for any purchased currency, and this could be claimed by filling out a form up until the 28th of August 2024. Between the announcement of closure and the closure date itself, an NPC named Cherry dropped 10 letters, each reflecting on parts of the game that were beloved by players. So players obviously played right up until the end, making the most of the time they had left with the virtual world of Line Play. I'm not aware of any petitions, but there were definitely a lot of upset and emotional send-offs online. In comparison to other games we've discussed, the closure of this one is still very raw. Although someone who has never played this game, and it seems like capitalist society roleplay, there are of course many people who loved and still love this game and made friendships, communities, and had a lot of investment in it, whether time related or financial. Now, there's never actually been an official remake of Line Play or a rewritten version up until the date of this video. There are lots and lots of games that are similar, and on the Line Play Reddit page there is a ton of players who have listed games that are very similar or give them the same vibe that Line Play did. There was a rumor started on Reddit that Line Play was being turned into a 3D game and re-released, but it actually turns out that this was a TikTok account proposing what it would be like if Line Play came back and was in 3D. The company did actually release a 3D avatar game, but it's specifically only avatar creation and is mainly to be cross-used with the Line messaging app as like profile pictures or to be shared with other users. And from what I can see, this game I think is free, but is mainly only used with other Line products. And that is it for the history of Line Play. Thank you so much for watching this video. I do very quickly want to apologize for the audio if it sounds bad. Like literally I had filmed 2.5 hours of this video and then something happened with the software that I used to capture my mic input and it just got rid of everything I had just done. I'm gonna wrap this video up for now. If you did play Line Play, please let me know and share your experiences in the comments. If I did make mistakes, I do welcome you to correct me, but only do this out of kindness. And if you did enjoy this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to see many more just like this one. Hydrate to stay great, get your daily calorie intake, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.